Tonight, we're digging into a story from 1990s Haryana that was buried on purpose for a very long time. Now, it starts off like a classic ghost story. You've probably heard one like it before. You know, the isolated farmhouse, bumps in the night, a terrifying presence. But what if the real monster wasn't a ghost at all? You see, the horror we're talking about here isn't supernatural. It's something much, much more common. It's the chilling, all too human poison of greed and betrayal. This is a story about how something as pure as loyalty can be twisted into a deadly weapon. And it all kicks off at a very lonely farmhouse.
All right, so let's set the scene. We're at this remote farmhouse, somewhere between Sonipet and Panipet, and the story really centers on one man, a man who was, by all accounts, the very definition of loyal. And the night his entire world got turned completely upside down.
Okay, so there are three people you really need to know to get what happens next. First, there's Raghav Malik. He's a wealthy businessman, owns the farmhouse, but lives in Delhi with his wife, Mohini. And, this is important, he has a known heart condition. And then there's Raju, the caretaker who looks after the property. For 10 years. Just think about that. For a full decade, Raju was the model employee. He started working at the farmhouse when he was just 20, and in all that time, he never gave Raghav a single reason to doubt him. He was trustworthy, he was loyal, or so it seemed. And this is where the stage is set for something terrible. Raghav calls Raju with some pretty strange news. He says he got a letter from the electricity department. For the next few days, the farmhouse is going to have a scheduled power outage every single night from 9 p.m. to 3 a.m., plunging this already isolated place into absolute, total darkness. Well, it doesn't take long for the phone to ring. It's Raju, and he is completely frantic. He's breathless, absolutely terrified, telling Raghav that something is seriously, seriously wrong. He sounds like a man about to have a complete breakdown, just begging his boss to come. Raghav's actually out of town, but he promises to rush back immediately. So Raghav races to the farmhouse, probably thinking he's just going to calm down his spooked caretaker. But what he's actually walking into is an atmosphere of pure dread. He's about to become the star of a horror story written specifically for him. When Raghav gets there, the farm is eerily quiet. No lights, no sounds. And for the first time in 10 years, Raju isn't at the gate to meet him. After fumbling around the dark property, he finally finds him. He's huddled in a corner of the stables, just paralyzed with fear. Raju tells him this absolutely terrifying story. He says he saw a face laughing at him from the window, heard footsteps circling the house. Then, at exactly 9 p.m., the power just died. And in the dark, he swears he saw a tall, headless woman standing right beside him. Now Raghav's thinking, okay, this is just a bad dream, but he agrees to stay the night to calm Raju down. But then, it starts happening to Raghav. At 9 p.m. sharp, just like Raju said, the lights go out. A little while later, he hears it too, that same creepy laughter, followed by the sound of glass shattering. That's it, he's had enough. He decides to leave, but his car keys, which he left right by the bed, are just gone. He's forced back inside, where he comes face to face with a dark figure in the kitchen. For a man with a weak heart, the shock is too much, and he just collapses. But Raghav doesn't die. He wakes up hours later on the floor, and when he does, the whole ghost story completely unravels, revealing a plot that is way, way more terrifying than any haunting. Imagine it. Raghav wakes up on the cold floor. The room is still pitch black. He hears a man's voice whispering in the shadows, talking on the phone. He can't quite make out who it is. So who was this terrifying figure? Who was this ghost? At 3 a.m., right on schedule, the power clicks back on, flooding the room with light. And the person standing over him is Raju, his loyal, terrified, 10-year caretaker. The ghost story? It was all an act, every last bit of it. In that exact moment, Raju's phone buzzes. Raghav glances down and sees the caller ID, and suddenly it all makes sense. Raju wasn't working alone. So who was the person on the other end of that line, the one really pulling the strings? It was Mohini, Raghav's own wife, the person he shared his life with back in Delhi. The betrayal was about as deep and as personal as it could possibly get. So here's the plot. It was actually pretty simple. Mohini was the mastermind, and she used Raju as her actor. Knowing all about Raghav's bad heart, the goal was to put on this whole haunting to literally scare him to death. cause a fatal heart attack. And Raju's reward for his part in the play? A promise of 5% of the inheritance.
But this is where the story takes its sharpest turn. Because Raghav wasn't just a victim lying on the floor. The second he pieced the conspiracy together, he didn't panic. He became cold, calculating, and started to weave a counterplot of his very own. Raghav calmly takes control of the entire situation. He looks at Raju, not with anger, but with just pure contempt, and he tells him, "You are just a pawn. But remember, the game isn't over until the king is defeated, and I am the king." And his strategy is absolutely ruthless. First, he forces Raju to call Mohini to lure her to the farmhouse to collect her inheritance. Then, he just outbids her. He makes Raju a brand new deal. Forget Mohini's 5%, kill her when she gets here, and I'll give you 10% of everything. And that brings us to the final act. This is where one last layer of betrayal gets peeled back, revealing a deception so complete that only one person is going to walk away from this. Mohini arrives all arrogant and victorious. She's actually taunting Raghav, completely unaware that her pawn has already switched sides. And in that moment, blinded by the promise of a bigger reward, Raju does exactly what Raghav told him to do. He murders Mohini. So Raju turns to his master, expecting his reward. And Raghav just smiles and delivers the final, devastating blow. He says, "I sold this farmhouse a week ago." The property they had just killed for was already gone. It was all for nothing. The official story the world would hear was simple, a tragic crime of passion. You know, the servant and the wife were having an affair. He killed her and then killed himself out of guilt. Raghav, the poor, grieving husband, got nothing but sympathy. But the reality? It was a cold-blooded triple cross. He turned his own attempted murder into the perfect crime. This whole horrifying story started with just a little bit of greed, a 5% slice of a fortune. But as we've just seen, that tiny seed of desire can spiral, and it can grow into a fatal poison real fast. It just makes you wonder, where is that line for people, and how frighteningly easy is it to cross?